To demonstrate these concepts, consider the following position. Gordon Ryan is in the seated guard. His opponent is standing up. There is space between Gordon and his opponent. Neither him or his opponent is touching the other. If the party started, Gordon Ryan will usually attack with an Ashiwaza. Ashiwaza in Japanese meaning foot technique. Pay attention to the right foot of Gordon Ryan. What he's going to do is try to shoot this leg forward as he hooks his own foot around his opponent's foot. Like so. Gordon will then hook his foot around the opponent's foot to create something called the sticky hook. Here's a better view of it. Notice that Gordon Ryan's foot is flexed, allowing him to control the leg and preventing his opponent from stepping back. With the sticky hook now established, Gordon is now going to continue applying force onto the opponent's foot, and one of two things is going to happen. In a perfect world, Gordon can use this technique to get a clean sweep, but it's often not a perfect world. If the clean sweep doesn't happen, the Ashiwaza is still quite valuable because of the following. Watch the opponent's right foot. The Ashiwaza forces the opponent to pick up his foot and then put it down to regain his balance. Gordon's going to do it again here. Watch that right foot again. He once again shoots it forward and creates a sticky hook around the opponent, continuing the force once he has the hook. This forces the opponent to make several hops and leg movements in order to regain his balance. The ability to off-balance your opponent is vital, and in Japanese it has a name. Kuzushi. Or to off balance. Kuzushi is vital. The moment you get your opponent off balance is the moment that you can move in for an attack. Here's an example of Gordon using an Ashiwaza to create Kuzushi and then launch an attack. Look, Gordon places an Ashiwaza in the inside of his opponent's right leg. He will then continue applying force to his left in order to create Kuzushi. While his opponent's trying to catch his balance, Gordon's able to go right to the Ushiro X, reap the knee, and then fall right into the cross Ashigarami position. A sequence that all started with Ashiwaza and Kazushi. Alright, now let's talk about different types of Ashiwaza. The first one is usually done with the bottom leg from a seated staggered stance, and the sweeping foot comes from outside of the opponent's foot. This style of Ashiwaza is called De Ashi Harai. Of all the Ashiwaza that I show you here in this video, this is probably the most commonly used by Gordon to create that initial Kuzushi, which is going to allow him to begin a cycle of attack. The second Ashiwaza we'll take a look at is a Kuri Ashi Harai. For this technique, Gordon begins by targeting his opponent's right foot with a De Ashi Harai. The opponent lifts his foot up. Instead of abandoning Ashiwaza attacks altogether, Gordon's going to pull his sticky hook towards himself to create a Kuzushi off of the opponent's supporting leg, allowing him to begin a cycle of attack. Now the next Ashiwaza we'll be discussing, you can see right here, this is a Kawchi Guardian. And it's important to know the difference between Kawchi Guardian and De Ashi Harai. For De Ashi Harai, my sweeping foot begins on the outside of my opponent's leg, and I'm applying force to the inside of my opponent's leg, like so. Kawchi Guardian is the opposite. It begins in the inside of my opponent's legs, and then force is applied to the outside of my opponent's leg. So it comes in the opposite direction as De Ashi Harai. Gordon will often use a second version of Kawchi Guardian known as the double Kawchi Guardian. Notice the two sticky hooks that are placed on the inside of the opponent's legs. This creates a big Kuzushi, but it's important to know how to apply the force. For this technique, one of the legs remains stationary. It does not move, while the other is going to pull back towards Gordon. I repeat, both legs do not move. One remains stationary as one applies force. Okay, now let's talk about going from an Ashiwaza, a foot technique, to a Teiwaza, which is a hand technique. We can see here Gordon places an Ashiwaza behind the opponent's foot there. He then uses that foot technique to create a Kuzushi, making his opponent bring his leg up. Bringing the leg up gives Gordon the opportunity to reach with his hand and then grip the opponent's foot to establish a Teiwaza, or hand technique. With this Teiwaza, Gordon's able to keep the Kuzushi going to the point where his opponent will actually come down to the ground. As you can see here, the opponent has landed on his knees. Now, here you see Gordon using one Teiwaza, one grip on the opponent's legs. And with that, he wants to continue the Kuzushi and eventually bring the opponent down to the ground. However, he can also establish a second Teiwaza, so watch this. Gordon begins with the Ashiwaza De Ashi Harai to get this thing started, creating Kuzushi, making his opponent step. When his opponent steps, he's going to reach with his left hand to establish a single Teiwaza. As the opponent tries to pull away, that's when Gordon establishes the double Teiwaza, as you can see here, or 2-on-1 grip. With this double Teiwaza, it's extremely easy for Gordon to pull his opponent to the ground, and in this case, he's even able to pull him straight to a hip. Here's another example. We see Gordon go in for the single Kawchi Guardian, creating Kuzushi that off-balances his opponent. As his opponent attempts to regain his balance, Gordon establishes a single Waza. As this continues to off-balance his opponent, Gordon is able to pull himself closer and establish a second Waza across his opponent's thigh. He then uses both of these Waza to get himself into a position called the Ushiro X-Guard. Ushiro meaning back or behind, as indicated by the position of Gordon Ryan's head behind his opponent's leg. Pay attention to Gordon Ryan's top hook here. What he's going to do is take that out and around to reap the opponent's knee. He's then going to force his opponent's right knee to turn inwards, just like so. Now, with his foot in place with that sticky hook, the opponent is unable to jump backwards, and the combination of the sticky hook and the reap knock this dude over. You can see all this play out from the double Kawchi as well. Notice the double Kawchi has been established, and he uses this to create a single Waza. The single Waza is used to establish a double Waza off the Kuzushi. He's now able to establish a sticky hook, and the three of these items together allow Gordon Ryan to trip up his opponent and bring him down to the mat. Gordon continues to use his Wazas to make a Kuzushi that brings his opponent up and over and forces him into the De La Riva guard. In this position, his opponent's going to attempt to stand up, so what Gordon Ryan's going to do is with his right hand, he's going to switch low for an Achilles grip. With his right foot, he's going to bring it inside to establish an inside sticky hook, like so. Here you can see Gordon Ryan has a grip on his opponent's Achilles, he has a sticky hook behind his opponent's calf, and he has another sticky hook on his opponent's cross buttocks. He uses these three Wazas to create a Kuzushi that brings his opponent down to his knees.